Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Karl Gruber, and I'm your host. My guest today is Karl Gruber. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely, Wanaka. I'm so blessed to have gotten this invite from you. You're doing good things with the Holy Spirit's curriculum. I love it.
Yeah, and you're doing so many wonderful things. You've been helping so many people with your healing sessions on the Power of Eight healing group, and you have a podcast where you are highlighting the fact of awakening all around the globe and in humankind and everywhere, which is a very important work to show how that operates, how that happens, how that is a normal thing for people to experience and so on. I love that. Yeah, well, and you are a Power of Attraction life coach, which is also another aspect. And you've been speaking about running and all these beautiful aspects of physical fitness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you could say at this point in my life, I'm a bit of a Renaissance man. I do a lot of different
things. I'd love to hear how you got to where you are at now. Okay?
Oh my gosh, you got about 5 or 6 hours. Well, it's interesting. I grew up in the hippie era in the United States here, and went to Ohio State University in Ohio, and it was anti-war movement and peace, love, dove, and I loved every moment of it. It was a blast. It helped me develop as a person. I was also a wildly and crazy person. I went on and got a degree in broadcast communications, and I became a radio disc jockey for 20 years. And loved doing that. I still have my microphone here, but now I'm a podcaster. And during that time, being a wild and crazy bachelor disc jockey, I picked up running. And running was a great way to stay in shape, and it also gave me mental clarity and kept my fitness and a good sense of well-being. And during that time, what I think, the running in the sense of well-being opened me up to receive spiritual wisdom and understanding and growth as a human being and as a spirit being. And like I said, I was enjoying the sensual life of a human body, and, I still do. But what I learned during that time was there was a lot more to what I was sensing around me. I started reading at the very beginning. This is a great place to start to expand your awareness as a spirit being, is with the classic, The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. Positive thinking is a great way to start. If you're just kind of like totally objective and, you don't know where you're going, start with that. And there's so many books. And then I went to Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, which was all about the law of attraction, but never mentions the law of attraction simply because it wasn't a term back then. And that was a book that has sold tens of millions, if not a couple hundred millions of copies since it was published in the 1930s. And then I went on to, the Wayne Dyers of the world and Deepak Chopra's and Tony Robbins. And so I developed a personal philosophy that I call positive possibility power thinking. And at that point in my life, I with my running and my new sense of expanded awareness of all things that exist beyond the human body and our individual power to create, I was out running one morning on a 6-mile run. I used to live way out in the countryside in southeastern Ohio. I had a beautiful home out in the country. And I just got an idea to run, I think I'm going to run a marathon a week for 52 straight weeks to raise money for leukemia research. Because at the time, I knew a little 5-year-old boy who had died from leukemia. And here I was, a positive possibility power thinker, and I go, well, what can I do to make a difference? I didn't even know it was a thing to go out and run a marathon a week for 52 weeks, 42.2 kilometers once a week, 26.2 miles once a week for an entire year. I quit my job at the radio station, went out and did it. I mean, it was a hell of an effort. It was an amazing up and down year of defeat and successes and raising money and awareness for leukemia. And I ended up April 27th will be my 25th anniversary of me completing that. And I became the 9th man in the world to do that. Well, what that did, I'm not telling you all this to show you how cool I am. I'm telling you that you can understand that things that are seemingly impossible are possible. I took on a gargantuan effort that most people said, you're nuts. Well, I was nuts for a good reason, and I did raise money and awareness for leukemia research at that time. But now, as a life coach, a certified law of attraction life coach, it gives me a podium of integrity to stand on in saying that there is more that you can accomplish than anything that you even think possible. Your body and your mind as a co-creator with God and the universe will accomplish anything. You just have to focus on it, utilize the law of attraction properly. And so that, that's take a big jump from there. Then I went on and continued my running and became a law of attraction life coach in 2012. And now I'm a podcaster with my podcast, World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. And I've interviewed some amazing, amazing individuals, teachers of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening. And gosh, it's just been great. So I told you I've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, very wonderful putting together of the things that started you on this journey. And I know that you came across A Course in Miracles at some point as well. And that gave another beautiful way of changing your mind about the world. I'd like to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you brought that up because I know your podcast, the ACIM, A Course in Miracles, is the foundation stone of what you're doing. And it's my personal foundation stone. So I mentioned earlier that I had been a follower and a reader of these inspirational icon self-help person, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who passed away a few years ago. And I think I was listening to an interview that he did with Tony Robbins. I think it was with Tony Robbins. And he mentioned this book, A Course in Miracles. And this is 2002. And I'm going, what's A Course in Miracles? And of course, my thirst to want to know more. That's my credo. I want to know. And so that was my first step. Well, here's the thing. I went to a big bookstore chain here in Ohio in the U.S. and bought A Course in Miracles, put it on my bookshelf, and it sat there for 2 years before I even looked at it. And then finally in 2004, I opened it and I started reading it. And as you well know, Wanako, it's when you first start reading it, and it's much of it's written in iambic pentameter, almost like Shakespeare. You read it and you go, what the hell is this? But as you stick with it, then you start to understand. And it opened me up to a world of non-dualistic spirituality. Now, my procedure is to get up every morning, get my coffee. I'll feed the cat first, get my coffee, and then sit down and read out loud some of the text or one of the workbook lessons in A Course in Miracles and meditate over it. And then I go out for a run. And as I run, I'm repeating the daily lesson that I learned. And ACM has been a big game changer for me.
Yeah, and I know that you have focused on the topic of ACIM on your podcast as well. You've brought a lot of people on it to speak about it. Yeah. And so let's go deeper into it. So how has the perspective of ACIM change the way you practice the law of attraction?
That is a great question. Well, I have an ebook that is free on my website, karlgruberlifecoach.com, that people can download. It's called The Three Pillars, a simple 3-step process to manifest positive and permanent change in your life. And it is a combination of utilizing the law of attraction with eternal universal laws, of course, based as taught in A Course in Miracles, which is based on non-dualistic spirituality. So how it changed it, as when I first started doing the law of attraction and teaching it and coaching it, like anybody who starts doing the law of attraction, you can get some things to manifest, but to get it consistently or to manifest those really big desires, there's a lot of inconsistency there. And I finally was thinking, why can't I get this to work consistently? And a lot of people who first come to the law of attraction, they go and they run into that same thing, inconsistency or complete lack of ability to manifest anything. They go, this is all crap. Why am I doing that? Well, I finally looked at now with my new spiritual principles of eternal universal laws of love and oneness, I said, well, what can I do to become a consistent co-creator with the universe? And I realized that the world comes from an egoic, dualistic principles and paradigms in the way we think and act. And there's where the inconsistencies are, because, as the world practices, there's all judgment and guilt and sin and hate and attack and lack and murder and wars. And when you go to the dualistic, the non-dualistic teachings of a spiritual Course in Miracles, you realize that that's all not real. According to A Course in Miracles, we are the Holy Son of God. We are a divine being capable of everything. All that was given, all that God has the ability to do, we have the ability to do because he created us. So this world is actually an illusion. We fell asleep in a dream of separation. And in this egoic dream of separation, we have this deep sense of guilt that, oh my gosh, I just pissed off God because I escaped and I'm separated myself from him. And that is the main, as A Course in Miracles says in lesson 80, one problem, one solution. That one problem is that sense of guilt that God wants to kill us and punish us because we separated ourselves. That's the ego's idea of it. When you come from that sense and realize it and finally stand up in your divine self, you can become a consistent co-creator. So again, this goes back to how it changed my thinking and teaching and living a law of attraction. Once you create your 3 pillars, the 3 pillars of your life are mental, physical, and spiritual. If you create those 3 pillars rock solid with no cracks in them because of the egoic paradigms of guilt and lack and attack and all that and judgment, those pillars hold up your entire house, your whole life. And you have to, by doing this, you create a rock solid personal foundation. And when you do this, you're going to see a change in your ability as a manifester with the law of attraction with the universe, because now you're coming from walking in the integrity of universal eternal laws of love and oneness. There is no shaky pillars. No, your foundation is not going to crumble and collapse. I mean, we see that with high profile people around the world, politicians, sports superstars, movie stars. We think they have the greatest life in the world, and all of a sudden, one or all 3 of their pillars create a crack in it, and their whole house has come down. And that's because they were living from the dualistic ego paradigm of their life instead of walking in the integrity of those universal eternal laws. That's the way to become a consistent law of attraction co-creator manifester with the universe.
Yes, that brings up a few questions for me. So the A Course in Miracles speaks of how we are infinitely valuable, how we are one, how we are the child of God. We did not make ourselves. God did. Therefore, our 100% perfection cannot be undermined by anything. So that sounds like the rock solid foundation you're speaking of, that we are whole, complete, and one, and there's nothing that will ever change that. And that's where I think the laws of love that you were speaking of come from. Maybe you want to expand on that.
Well, and to do that consistently, I mean, that's where studying A Course in Miracles on a daily basis, or as often as you possibly can, is important. In doing so, let me step back for a moment. So if we're dreaming that we are in this illusion of separation from all that is, which we are, and we're dreaming this body, this physical world of density, then, we still have to live here until we learn all of our lessons of forgiveness in each lifetime we live, until we finally don't have to come back and we can raise up into the 5D and return home to all that is, to the Creator. You still have to live here. And so if you can start practicing the teachings, the non-dualistic teachings of A Course in Miracles, you're going to find, again, this is where you're going to solidify your own personal foundation, your 3 pillars of your life, so that you can go through life and you're still going to live a human being. You can live a normal life here. I've interviewed 2 or 3 times and become friends with one of the greatest teachers in the world of A Course in Miracles, Gary Renard, who wrote the seminal book on A Course in Miracles called The Disappearance of the Universe. And Gary has said exactly that. You can live a normal life. You can be a compassionate person, and you don't have to go up to somebody who's having issues and say, oh, you're just dreaming all that. This is just an illusion. And people are not going to understand that unless you ease into it and allow them to learn it on their own. So that's how, if you can go through your life in this world of density, in the world of form, and practice these principles, excuse me, then you'll actually live a happier, more joyful, healthier life in a consistent manner. And myself, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before on our Power of 8 meetings long ago, I'm more peaceful than I've ever been before. And as far as judgment goes, which is a human characteristic in the egoic world, we get judgment thoughts on a moment-to-moment basis. And it's not like I don't have judgment thoughts, but what I've become with that now, I just simply observe them come. It's like if you're sitting at a railroad crossing and a train is going by, right? And you're just sitting there and watching them go. So I get a judgment thought, whether I'm just driving down the road or if I'm meditating or if I'm just hanging out and drinking a beer or something, and all of a sudden this judgment thought comes by, and it's like that train going by. I just observe it. Oh, look, there's that judgment thought. And it just goes away. And I finally said, I just honor that thought and I just let it go by. I said, sorry, I'm not interested anymore. And it's gone.
Yeah, that's really a good point, right? To let go of these judgments and to let them pass by, even if they're there. Yeah, this whole idea of the happy dream that is spoken of in A Course in Miracles, that is a result of the forgiveness work that we do, that is only necessary because we're dreaming. we were not dreaming, there would be no necessity for forgiveness. The happy dream is the next thing that comes up. So that's what you were speaking of. You become happier because of forgiving what actually didn't happen. And that's a big step to say, okay, I was not wronged, I was not hurt, I was not harmed, the other person wasn't either, and I can see this differently if I choose to allow that to become my perspective or my view of things. And that's amazing. It's such a powerful journey. And I think you are one of these people who have had many of these experiences. And I think that what I like also in your podcast is you're very open-minded. You have people who come with channeling experiences. They're channeling these beautiful beings from other dimensions and so on. And they're all bringing through these messages of love, joy, and happiness, empowerment, recognizing the power of our minds and all these things. And I think that has impacted you a lot. And I'd like to hear more about that as well.
Well, I'm going to go back just for a second because you brought up forgiveness, and I would like to talk about forgiveness. As you know, that is one of the, if not the main theme of A Course in Miracles and forgiveness. There's the way the world practices forgiveness is dualistic. I mean, A Course in Miracles actually says the way the world practices forgiveness, it's actually a form of attack. And I'm sure people hearing that go, what? Wait, I told him I forgive him, but no. So let's say somebody wrongs you. Maybe somebody stole $5,000 from you, right? That's a lot of money. And so finally you get to this point and you say, I can regroup that. I forgive you. But in the egoic paradigm of the way the world practices forgiveness, it's on both levels. Here's the forgiver. I'm up here, but you're the sinner. You're the person who caused the problem. You're down here. There's never any equality there. So you may say, forgiveness, I forgive you. Yes, you were bad, but I forgive you. Well, what that does is you're still in your subconscious. You are vibrating at a lower egoic area, and that subconscious area is, you're a bastard. You stole $5,000 from me. Even though you've said in your conscious mind and in your verbiage, you said, I forgive you. The way real non-dualistic forgiveness, and I actually call it quantum forgiveness, works is, it's exactly what you said, Wanako, and I'm so glad you said this. We see something that was done bad to us as simply an error. It really didn't happen. Sure, we're in this world of density and form, but in reality, the true reality at home where we really are as a divine self, it was just an error. So if you can rise to that level of non-dualistic judgment or quantum forgiveness and say, I forgive you, there you are. There's the, quote, sinner, and there's you. You are back equal. You understand that what I put out is given back to me. So, if you truly forgive it, then you too are forgiven. And that is a beautiful, beautiful place to go. But I know you mentioned my podcast and the people that I'm working with. It is really interesting. I'm about to record my 60th episode coming up this coming Monday, and actually he's with a teacher of A Course in Miracles. It has been right, exactly. And you said this, that I'm very open to many things, and it's been really, really interesting to hear from channeled beings. Recently, actually, I'm a co-host on another podcast, Your Spiritual Shift, with my friend Jennifer Matthews. She lives in Perth, Australia, and I'm in Ohio in the U.S. That's fun scheduling the time on that. But we interviewed Maureen Allen a couple weeks ago. It's online on our YouTube channel, Your Spiritual Shift, with Jen and Karl. And she's actually described as the primary oracle for Kuan Yin, Jesus and Mary, and Buddha. And she channeled Kuan Yin for us. And wow, it's really interesting. The ethereal sound of Kuan Yin's voice was incredible. But the love and the truth that came through was just like, I just sat there just literally going, well, thank you. And I've talked to so many other beautiful beings and light workers, and wow, boy, that my mind just is still just expanding out into the cosmos with that.
Yes, that's a really beautiful side of what we both are doing, right? Is really bringing in all these different beings and perspectives and allowing them to show how they provide a foundation for love to thrive by sharing what they have to share. And yeah, I one of your guests also was educated by the same people I was educated in channeling and energy work and so on. So that was very interesting too. So I was very intrigued. Yeah.
Who was that?
So my teachers in channeling were Sanea Roman and Wayne Packer with their guides were in and top end. And so that's where I learned channeling from. But I have had other teachers as well, and I'm going to be having the wife of one of my teachers on the podcast soon. So that's going to be great. She's going to she's going to share a lot about the body mirror system that I also studied. So yeah, so there's a lot of things coming up, and I'm really intrigued that we are going on a very similar journey with this, and I'm so happy about it.
Well, isn't that the beautiful thing, Wanako? I mean, you and I aren't the only ones. I mean, I've talked about this over and over and over on podcasts and on my own podcasts, and the podcasts I'm interviewed on is here we are in the midst of the year 2020 in global chaos and fear like we've never encountered in the memorable history of the world for mankind. And you know, we have a planet with almost 8 billion people on it, and most of them are living in fear because of all the stuff they've been fed. We've got this, we got a war here, we got a virus here, and this, and we got a shortage here. And the thing is, even though there's still the majority of the world is in that state, people like you and myself and all the other people we connect with and the listeners and viewers of this beautiful podcast, they're raising their game. They're raising their vibrational energy level to higher and higher as they start studying and understand their true non-dualistic spirituality, that they are a human they are a spiritual being having a human experience. And, most people have no idea beyond anything about this body. What are you talking about? Well, there's now not only hundreds of thousands, there's millions of people like you and me, and hopefully hundreds of millions with 8 billion people on the planet. We're raising the game. And as you and I and our other colleagues raise their game and raise the light, so too are they raising the vibration and light of the rest of humanity. And I love that aspect. And it's a big help in this crazy world today.
Yes, and that's one of the ways we are supporting each other too, because we are bringing this forth. We are sharing it, no matter where we are standing in it ourselves, which is guided by spirit to share from where we are at, because we're all facing the same, many of the same challenges, especially the forgiveness issue. We all are in the midst of forgiving, no matter what we're facing, right? And that's so powerful. Yeah. So let's go on with that. So how did you get inspired to podcast? Because I know that I started on the 5th of December 2019. It's the podcast. And that was like a few months later, the pandemic started. So it's a very, very interesting connection of how I was guided to do this before the main event started being visible to us of the pandemic. Yeah. So I think we are really being guided in this, and I think you were also guided, and I'd love to hear how you came to that.
Well, I mentioned earlier that I had a 20-year career as a radio disc jockey here in the U.S., and it was my passion since I was a little boy. I can remember being in junior high and saying, "Oh, I want to be a disc jockey," because I used to listen to the local disc jockeys growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. And yeah, that's cool. I want to do that. And I got my bachelor's degree in communications from Ohio State University. So I went on into commercial radio, and it was in commercial radio for about 17 years in total. And then I was out of it for a while. And then in 2017, 18, and 19, I started a job at a local, what they call public radio here in the United States. It's not commercial radio. They offer alternative programming and news and that type of thing. And so I was just working part-time, and I got the idea to do, because I was already doing my life coaching business and spiritual studies and everything. And I approached the program director and said, how about if I do a 1-hour special with these alternative views? Because, it was public radio, which is open to alternative views. And so I interviewed Gary Renard, a couple other people, James Goy Jr., who's known as the money guru, but he's definitely a spirit being. Christy Whitman, my mentor and teacher of the Law of Attraction, who certified me as a Law of Attraction coach, and Rich Harris, another guy, another Law of Attraction guru. So I put together this 1-hour program meant to be over-the-air radio. And when I finished it, and my program director listened, and he goes, "Oh, people are going to think it's about religion." I go, "What?" I go, No, it's got nothing. But anyway, so bottom line is, it was wonderful that happened. It didn't air there. It gave me the idea, well, I'll just take this 1-hour program and create it as a podcast. And I put that on the air as my very first podcast, World Awakenings, a Fast Track to Enlightenment. And then June 18th, 2018, I interviewed my fellow colleague, life coach Isabel Stahl from Oslo, Norway, and haven't looked back. I've been doing that. So my microphone experience translated into podcasting, and I love it because it keeps me sitting behind this microphone and having fun and enlightening people.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. I also was doing radio shows during my study of social and cultural anthropology. So yeah, but not as intensive as you, and not in a professional way. Nonetheless, yeah. I've arrived at being a podcaster as well. So.
I love it. Yeah, and you're doing a great job.
Yeah. So let's see if we can shift gears. I'm sure you've had many different experiences of a transcendental or mystic nature, and maybe you would like to share some of those and how your views changed because of allowing those experiences to be real for you or be part of your life.
Well, that's really interesting that you asked that question, because I really have not had hardly any transcendental experiences of, like the guests that I have on my show. I mean, so many people have had what they call NDEs, near-death experiences, where they, temporarily leave their body on the verge of their body dying, and they join in with a all that is and understand the unity of all that is, and that we're all, it's a holographic nature, that you look like an individual, but you're part of the whole, and we all are. Like a great example of that is Anita Moorjani, who wrote the book Dying to Be Me, in which she did that. And she's a Hay House, very successful author. I'd love to get her on my show. So I'm more of a facilitator. And, that's another thing, too, about how I started the podcast. As I mentioned this earlier, I just had, at this point in my life, I have this desire. I want to know. I want to know why there is something better than this. So it leads me to that. And so I kind of do have those transcendental experiences through my guests. I learn from them. I'm open to it. I may have some of those things too, but that if I do, they're going to come to me in the right way, in the right time, and for the benefit and the good of all. I'd say about the only true, real, transcendental experience I had within this human body is when I was coming up. I had just come up with the idea to run the 52 marathons in 52 weeks that I did in 96, 97. So I was on my morning run through this beautiful southeastern Ohio countryside at sunrise, and the mist was coming up through the fields, and I was running on a dirt road, and nobody's around, and I'm running along feeling great. And I had already come up with the idea and put in the wheels in motion to get what I called my super run for the cure of the 52 marathons in 52 weeks for leukemia. And I'm running down this road, and I'm not far from maybe a mile and a half from being done. And I'm running along. And at this point, the little boy that I knew had already passed away from leukemia. And suddenly I saw thousands and thousands of people lining this dirt road on both sides of the road. And I go, what? And so I don't even know. I've talked to other people who have had experiences like this. I didn't see them with my eyes, but I saw them. I saw them with my vision clear as day. And these people are all on the line on the side of the road as I'm running, and they're going like this, "Be our hero, Karl. Be our hero." And I realized that there were all the thousands and thousands of people throughout all of history that had died from leukemia. And here I was giving up all that I knew for an entire year to go do something to find a cure for leukemia. And as I was running, all of a sudden, these people were cheering. And then all of a sudden, the little boy who I knew had died was running in front of me, smiling and laughing with other little children who had passed away from leukemia. But he looked exactly like he did when he was completely healthy. And they're all, yay, And I'm just like, my mouth is hanging open while I'm running. I go, what? And I finally got past this dirt road to a little hill that was going to take me up to the main road. And I stopped and I looked around, and they all faded away. And that was it. And boy, after that, man, there's no way in hell I'm not going to run these 52 marathons in a year. So that's truly my one transcendental experience.
I think that's a very significant point, that this experience encouraged you to actually do what you had been given to do, and to have the power to follow through with the whole thing. And that you were speaking of, transcendental, it's everything that leads to more peace in your mind, right? Is a transcendental experience, because every time you have these miracles of forgiveness, you are feeling this connectedness, or this stillness, or this wholeness. For me, and I know we have very flashy guests on our podcasts with amazing stories and so on, and we could go like, wow. Right. But it doesn't make the experience that you're having less transcendental. It's just more, it may have the flashiness doesn't make the profundity. Profundity is what makes the power of it. And I think your recognition of forgiveness and how it works and and all these things are very, very profound. We each of us has a different experience of how to share about this. And there are times when it's important that it's flashy, and then you'll have a flashy tale to tell. And if it's, but that's not always the voice we are to come with, right? The Spirit guides us in this.
Well, it's curious, that story I just told about the people cheering me on. A few years later, after I completed my 52 marathons, I wrote a book about it, and it's called Running for Their Lives, THEIR, because I ran for other people's lives. And basically, it was a marathon by marathon recounting of when I went through. And I wrote that story in the opening of that book. And it's interesting. That book's been out since 2007. I rarely ever have anybody who has read the book even mention it or asks me. And I would have thought that people would have been more curious about that. But, it happened and spurred me forward, which I did.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So they just took the story and accepted it for what it was, right? And there was no, and often, when you think these experiences might be testified against, or people might be annoyed about it or whatever, often what we actually have to share is accepted by by everyone almost, right? And there's very few who might have something to say that might contradict it or might question it. But most people will be actually asking more into the depth of what it was about, what it was like, what it meant to you, what it means as a message for humanity, what you are bringing forth. And I think that's also the way you are asking your guests as well. You're not asking, is it real or not? That's not the questions you're asking. You're asking, what does it mean for you? What can you bring forth? What is your message? How is it helpful to us? What can we do to accept the peace of mind that is available for us? And I think that's very significant that humans are able to go to that level where we say, okay, it's not about, is it true or false? It's more about, is it helpful to us? And I think that's also one of the very basic tenets also in Law of Attraction and of Course in Miracles and in many other teachings. What actually gives us the power and the motivation to make that shift into love? And I think that's one of the powers of what we are doing when we are sharing our stories and helping others to share their stories.
Well, I just like to, for a moment again, as far as having a personal, individual, quote, transcendental experience, whatever. I think you don't really have to have a transcendental experience in the way we think about, I went out of my body and astral traveled and I met a Syrian and the Ascended Master came down and talked to me and we were hanging out and he was telling me all the eternal universal truths. Again, like I mentioned this before, that I basically at this point, I seem my purpose seems to be a facilitator of this. Now, when I meditate, I'm just quiet. I mean, I studied A Course in Miracles this morning. I'm in the middle of I did lesson 118 in the workbook, and it's a review, and one of them is, let me be still and listen to the truth. Let me be still and listen to the truth. So you can perfectly do that and maybe not hear Jesus come down and say, hey, good job, Karl. But you are in connection with it. And literally just sitting there quietly and listening for the truth, you've raised your energy vibration to a higher level, more into the spiritual realm. So as you do that, and again, these experiences, if it was meant to be in your life and your particular individual purpose, it'll come to you at some point. But it's just like the law of attraction. If you want something too bad, like oh man, I really want to have a transcendental experience. I want to go, I want to go hang out with Jesus and the Syrians and all this. And it's like the law of attraction. If you want something so too bad, it's like trying to pound a square peg into a round hole. You're actually creating a blockage. So just allow yourself to be in that mode, raising your vibration in non-dualistic spirituality and love and truth and unity. It'll come to you in the right way at the right time. Maybe not the way you imagine, but believe me, it will.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that the recognition that you need in order to make the next steps will come to you in a way that works for you. And that may be very different from what you've heard from other people, but it's just as powerful and valid. And that's the power of it, right? That's what I want. I also want to encourage that, as you were, that we need to say yes to the way it is given to us. Because, some people say, I can't tell my story because it's not flashy. It's not full of those amazing transcendent, what people think are transcendental experiences are not, because that's also an idea of what it is. And it may not have anything to do with what it actually is, right? But anyways, it can be for one person, it can be different for another. And the power of it is that we come from where we are at. And yes, this facilitating is a beautiful thing too, because it's facilitating our own story as well, our own recognition of who we are. Because I'm recognizing myself and my guests as well, and they're recognizing themselves in these conversations, and we are simply strengthening the truth of who we are. That's the power of connecting.
Yeah, and I think you're correct. We don't have to be flashy about it. I mean, again, having talked to Gary Renard several times, I've gone to dinner with him and spoken extensively to him about these things. And I've heard other people point this out there, that some of the greatest spiritual masters in the history of mankind never spoke about it to anybody. They just lived their life as peaceful and as happy as they did. But when you're in that mode and you are at such a high spiritual level, just being, just living and moving through your daily life in humanity, you are actually, that person, that spiritual master is actually raising the level of light and truth and oneness. And literally, I mean, we've heard these stories, and whether it was Jesus or is somebody from, who knows, Ghana, Africa, who was actually a spiritual master and never came out, but walked down the street, people just smile and they can feel it. You can feel that. And just being at that level of spiritual master, they actually raise the vibration and the light of the entire world, all of humanity.
I think that's a point that A Course in Miracles is also good at. It says, accept the atonement for yourself. That's your only purpose, is to accept the atonement for yourself. So if accepting the atonement for yourself includes sharing and becoming public and so on, then that is that way. But it's not the only way that accepting the atonement for yourself can look like.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up the atonement. A lot of people go, what's the atonement? Well, the atonement in learning non-dualistic spirituality is the undoing of the dream, the undoing of the original error of us falling asleep in a dream of separating ourselves from our creator and all that is, and falling into a dense body with an ego mind, just where all the judgments are flying. That is what the atonement is. As you learn and as you study the truth of the reality of yourself as a divine being that you are and still are, even though you may have forgotten, then the undoing, all of those things fall away from you. Maybe not right away. I mean, for me, it's been a lifetime. All of these is what's a classic example of peeling layers off an onion. There goes another layer. There goes another layer. That's what the atonement is: the undoing of the egoic separation and dream of separation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Remembering who we are in its entirety. And that feels like a dropping away of things. But these things were not real in the first place. So I remember in A Course in Miracles, it has a lot of passages about how you are not losing anything, right? You are. So it may appear like something is going away or something is falling away or this and that. But the truth is you are accepting the full scope of who you are. And in that process, things that appear to have been valuable before no longer are valuable because they do not exist in truth. They were illusions to begin with. And they were pointers that where you were making yourself believe that you were separate. And that's why they're falling away. But separation is less than wholeness, is not real, right? Wholeness is real. So that's the recognition that we are going for. Yes, I know we're coming to our end, and I'd like to thank you so much for the wonderful conversation, and I'd love to continue our conversation in many other ways, and we will, I'm sure. And yeah, is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to cover now before we wrap up?
I just think that my message is to the world right now in the middle of this extreme chaos in so many different ways. Don't be afraid. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. And this is exactly what the ego and all the dark forces in the world want, is fear and separation. I mean, a classic line is, "You must be 6 feet apart." Don't hug anybody, that type of thing. I mean, that's just a little example of that. Don't be afraid. The truth is that we are here. And what was it in the Course in Miracles? I believe it says, you go forth in your day with powerful unseen companions, and believe me, they have your back. It was interesting too, because like I told you, I run almost every day of the year outside, and I've only been doing that for 42 years. It keeps me healthy and fit. And I was just running along the other day, and I've just said, I call my teachers and my guides and my angels that hang out with me, I call them Team Karl. And I said, "Man, Team Karl, I'm having a tough day running, but thanks for being here running with me." And I heard, it's not like this thundering voice that comes at you. "Karl, we've run every step of every single run you've ever done with you the entire way. We've been with you the entire way. And you know what? Every single person on the planet has mighty unseen companions. And when you have that trust and faith, fear can fall away." Said, "I'm taken care of." Isn't that beautiful?
Yes, it's very beautiful. And I think one of the quotes from A Course in Miracles, or one of the thoughts, is, "You are never alone." And if you knew who was walking beside you or running beside you or working beside you, you would never have anything to fear, ever. You would fear nothing. You would be fearless.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Wanako, for having me on your wonderful show. You're doing so much good, and you are raising the light and the vibration of the world yourself. I'm going to give you an order. I want you to get healthy. All right. Remember my mantra: injury and illness are not an option. Repeat that over and over. Injury and illness are not an option.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think we can all agree that that's a beautiful mantra. Yeah, let's pick up on it. I would like to thank all listeners and viewers for participating in this, joining us, and having such a good time with us, because this is an endeavor that we are experiencing together, because nothing happens alone. It's always a joint happening. So all healing is not just ourselves, but of everyone together. So in that sense, together, we do this together. So I thank you all, and please review the podcast, spread the word, and let's continue this good, wonderful journey together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annika.